Hello, everybody. Welcome to this what has turned out to be a virtual Meet the Finalists. We started this process back in February. It's been a long process with the board and with our community group to kind of get to this point. When we started this, we hoped that this would be a live event in our auditorium. But unfortunately, our COVID situation has gotten in the way of that. But we're hopefully making the best of that. And again, I don't know if I mentioned my name is Dave Wilkeson. I am board president. And the people that have been involved in this process to get us to this point, obviously the school board, Mr. Tullio, our interim superintendent, Patty Prince, our treasurer, and a 15-member panel of community members. And those people ranged from political figures, representative of the various parent groups and just general community groups, staff members. And we went through quite an extensive process as we moved along here. We are streaming this live right now to, and this is kind of a first time for a lot of this. We're streaming it live to Facebook, YouTube. There's a link from the Canfield website, and also to the Armstrong Channel 201. And I'll thank our Mayor Duffett, for texting me that idea earlier, and our tech people for figuring that out in a really quick hurry. But it's also on that Armstrong channel. We will be taking your questions in 3 different ways. On Facebook, so you can post your questions there. On our YouTube channel, if you see that, there's a comment section. You can go in there, you can put your questions right there. And then there's also a link, and you'll find it all over the place. It's on YouTube, it's on Facebook, and it's on the website. There is a link to a form, and you can go to that form and you can put your question in there anonymously as well. So any of those ways, we hope we have provided you enough places that you can kind of get your question asked. And then probably the most important thing from this forum is we're looking for your feedback. There is a link in all of those same locations for a survey. And in that survey, we're just asking a few questions, and we want your feedback about these candidates. And that's really important. That survey will be open until tomorrow at 8 p.m. So it is open now, and it will be open until 8 p.m. At some point, too, we're going to give you a QR code, and you can actually just point your phone at your computer screen if that's what you're watching on, or at the TV. It should work there as well, and it should take you right to that survey, and you can give us that feedback. I think that is all the housekeeping things I wanted to hit on. So at this point, I'm going to turn this over to Dan Schreier. Dan Schreier is part of CF Educational Solutions. He is that is the consulting company that we helped kind of get us through this process. They've been invaluable throughout, and really, I give them kudos for all of the help that they've given us on this. But with that, Dan, I'll let you go from there, and I'm going to sign off, and I'm going to watch.
Thank you, Dave. And ladies and gentlemen, across the entire Canfield School District and Canfield community, welcome. Welcome to a very important night as you get the opportunity to meet 3 outstanding candidates that'll lead your school district for the hope of many, many years to come. Our first candidate tonight is Tim Myers, and this evening he will start off by sharing a little bit about himself and why he wants to be superintendent for the Canfield School District. As you provide the questions, they will be coming to me, and I will be asking them as a facilitator this evening, and I will try to ask as many questions as we can on what you're giving me. But if there's a lot of questions, we may not get to all of them. but we hope to get to as many as possible. And we appreciate all of you that are in attendance and watching tonight. It has been an honor to work with this Board of Education and your entire administrative team and the many teachers and staff and community leaders that we have met throughout this process. With that, ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you Tim Myers. And Tim, let's start off by telling them a little about yourself and why Canfield.
Certainly. Well, I'd like to start off and talk about my educational career. I did my undergraduate work at Morehead State University in Morehead, Kentucky. I've done all my graduate work through the University of Dayton. I began my teaching career at the high school that I graduated from. I taught at St. Clairsville High School, where I was a teacher and a coach. I enjoyed all my years in the classroom and as a coach. I left to begin my administrative career, and I went to Morgan Local Schools in McConnellsville, Ohio, where I became the assistant high school principal and the athletic director. After a few years in that role, I moved to Upper Sandusky High School, where I was the high school principal for 6 years. Following that stint, I went to Van Buren Schools, where I am currently at, and I have been the superintendent of Van Buren Schools for 16 years. Why am I interested in the Canfield School District? Number one, your school district has an excellent reputation, has an excellent academic reputation. It is an outstanding school district, and it's the type of school district that I would love to be a part of. I believe that I can not only I can help make the Canfield school districts not only as great as they are, but actually make it better. And I look forward to that opportunity. Why Canfield? Most people wonder why I want to move across the state. I like to say that I'm actually from Eastern Ohio. I was born in Salem, Ohio. Grew up for the first several years of my life in Hanoverton, Ohio. I have many relatives in Columbiana County, and it's like coming home. So the excellent school district and the fact that it's like coming home are why I'm very interested in the Canfield district, as well as being able to be a part of a great school district and make it better.
Tim, thank you for that start. Our first question from the community is, how did you, in your current position, work with both educators and the community to improve your school?
Well, one of the biggest ways was during my tenure at Van Buren, we did 2 strategic plans. And in those strategic plans, both times, the community was greatly involved in the development of those plans. They had a say in what direction they wanted to see the school, what they believed the school's strengths and weaknesses were. The staff was involved in those decisions as well. And the plans that we developed were a consensus of the concerns of everyone involved in the district. That's one of the biggest ways that I've done it. Other ways that I do, I believe in building relationships and communication with people in the community, with the staff. It's only by having open communication and us all working together for what we believe and what we want the district to be that we can be successful.
Tim, the next question, how do you currently engage with the student body so that they have a voice?
Well, I try to, as the superintendent, particularly at the high school level, throughout the school year, I try to attend a student council meeting. I try to attend a lot of the athletic events and the music events. Talk to the kids in the hall when I get the opportunity. I just interact and support the students.
Thank you. We have read about financial issues in Van Buren. Tell us what you've learned from that situation in order to help with state cuts to Canfield's budget.
Van Buren is a very unique school district in the state of Ohio. While there are a lot of similarities to the Canfield School District, Van Buren in the state of Ohio is considered one of the rich school districts. Unfortunately, they get compared to Upper Arlington's, the Orange school districts, the Olentangy school districts, the Indian Hill school districts. it's hard for the community to understand that those are the type of school districts they get compared to. The financial problems that have come in the Van Buren School District have nothing to do with any of the management or the way the district has been run. It's just that state fund for the Van Buren School District is very minimum. The school is mostly supported by local taxes. A lot of those taxes in the past were due to business and industry taxes, but with the loss of tangible personal property tax and a lot of those issues, more of that tax burden has fallen on the homeowners. And it's just been a challenge for them to understand that the state has taken things away from them and they need to foot the bill because the state is not going to give them any additional funds.
Thank you, Tim. You said you can make Canfield better. What do you feel are some of the specific areas where we need improvement in Canfield?
Well, some of the biggest issues that I've seen as I've done my research, one is obviously, I've heard that there is a facilities issue in the Canfield schools. You've got aging buildings, buildings that maybe aren't serving the purposes that our students need at this point in time. So facilities is a big issue. Another issue that I have in my research, it seems that there has been a communications issue, a disconnect maybe between the school district, the superintendent, and the Board of Education with the community. And I see that as another very strong piece that needs to be addressed to build those relationships, to build that trust with the community so that we can all work together to improve the Canfield schools.
Outstanding. Thank you, Tim. Another question from the community. Do you have the experience to run a school district and expand learning opportunities for our students, even if it means changing old systems?
Absolutely. One of the biggest things that I'm proud of as an accomplishment at the Van Buren School District is, like Canfield, we had an excellent school district that was in the report card being reported as an excellent school district and an excellent with distinction school district. But as I reviewed what we were accomplishing, we were doing excellent at those state requirements, but I didn't feel we were meeting the needs of our students, particularly as 21st century skills came involved and things needed, our students needed more skills and different skills. So I worked diligently. I wrote grants. I worked with some outside companies who verified that was correct. We had an excellent traditional high school, but we were lacking those other skills that students needed. And I worked diligently to make those changes at the high school, where we now have we've developed more STEM programs, we've developed more early college programs, we've developed more career pathways, we're providing more internships for our students. But that's an example of how I have tried to make changes to make the school district better.
So Tim, in that answer where you're talking about changes, you talk about some of the new programs you've done. So this kind of relates. How did you improve technology at Van Buren schools?
Technology, I have always been a huge proponent of technology. I can go back to when I was a teacher at St. Clairsville back in 1994. I actually wrote the district technology plan for the entire district. We were one of the first ones to do those plans that you had to do back then. So I've always been a strong proponent of technology. At Upper Sandusky High School, at Upper Sandusky School District, we felt technology was going to be very important for the future. I believe technology has changed a lot in the way that we teach. We were one of the first school districts in Northwest Ohio to go to a one-to-one program. Currently, every student in kindergarten through a senior in high school at Van Buren has a school-provided device. And grades 4 through 12, those students are permitted to take them home. K through 3, they stay in the classroom, but every student has a school provided computer. So I'm a big proponent with, and I believe because of that preparation that we did at Van Buren, I believe that we were better prepared for the coronavirus stay-at-home order, and were able to already be prepared to our students to do that type of distance learning.
Outstanding. Thank you so much. How committed are you, Tim, in keeping the outstanding music educational programs at the high school and the middle school levels?
I believe music, just as athletics, just as all other extracurricular activities, are extremely important for not only well-rounded students, but to meet the needs and the motivation for all students. On the one hand, let me tell you that when I was in St. Clairsville High School, I was in the choir for 4 years. We had a reputation of always getting a superior rating in the state of Ohio. So music has always been important to me.
Do you promise not to lie or even mislead the community if you are blessed to have the opportunity to be the school superintendent?
Absolutely. I consider that one of my strongest traits. That is the trait that got me hired at Van Buren Schools as their superintendent. They had dealt with some communication issues and some lack of trust issues. And what I promised them when they hired me is that I would not lie. They could always trust what I had to say. That doesn't mean we will always agree, but I will never mislead, and I will never tell a lie. And it served me well. It built trust that I was there for 16 years.
Outstanding. Thank you so much. How do you contribute to the positive culture change in your district?
Again, you have to build that trust, and you have to build those relationships, and then you have to develop common goals and make sure that everyone is working together for the common goal, and not have fringe here and people going this direction and people going that direction. You can do that by developing a very detailed strategic plan. You do that by building relationships. But it's just building that trust with people, and then working together to move forward.
A very timely question with what the school districts are going through right now. Given the likelihood that the fall of 2020 will be a blended remote learning due to COVID-19 concerns, what are your proposed recommendations for how that might look here in Canfield?
Well, I think before I can give a detailed plan, I need to consult more with the administrative team, more with the Board of Education, and more with the community and the parents to truly understand their feelings and their direction for some of that. Again, I do believe a blended learning situation is going to have to occur, but it's the question of how that may best work in the Canfield School District. I would need more input from people before I could sit here and say this is exactly the plan that I want to follow. But I feel all the stakeholders need to be heard as we're developing that plan.
So this kind of ties to that a little bit, Tim. With your interest and experience with technology, would you ever consider developing online or a blended online classroom option for students?
I believe that we should look at all of that. All students learn differently, and everything doesn't work for every kid. That's one reason why when I mentioned earlier that at Van Buren we brought in career pathways, and we brought in early college, and we were bringing in STEM. The whole point was not all kids have the same interests, not all kids learn the same way. There are kids who could easily do independent learning with technology right now and be very successful, but that's not for every kid. So you have to find out what works for each kid, and you have to have different programs to meet the needs for all kids. Some kids will do a blended learning and be very successful. Some kids will not. Some kids may need that face-to-face every day. So it's just making sure we have programs in place to meet the needs for all kids.
So at Van Buren Schools, how did you make special education a priority?
Special education really was important to us at Van Buren Schools, besides the fact that you know, they needed extra help, they needed extra materials, they needed different things. What we're proud of, one thing that we were proud of at Van Buren is the Van Buren School District chose to house all the multiple handicap units for all the local school districts in Hancock County. We were proud to have that, all of those students in our building. We felt it was a good opportunity for us. It was a good opportunity for all of our students to learn diversity and to work with other kids. Special education students deserve every opportunity to learn and develop to the best of their abilities.
So if selected as Canfield School Superintendent, what are your first 2 or 3 priorities on the first 30 days of the job?
The first thing I'm going to do is meet as many people as possible, particularly the staff, particularly the administrative staff, particularly begin to meet the teaching staff, work with the Board of Education, begin to be visible, meet people within the community. I will have an open door policy where I'm always available to listen and meet with people. I want to be involved in community activities. I want to get out in front of as many people and get to know as many people and get their feelings about the school as quickly as I can.
You know, when you're a school superintendent, there's a lot of extracurricular activities and intracurricular activities, from athletics to the arts with band, choir, drama, and to all the student organizations, whether it's a STEM club, National Honor Society, or Student Council. How do you, as a superintendent, make sure you treat all students equally?
Sure. Well, I try to be visible in each one of those as much as possible. Obviously, you can't be at everything every day throughout the school year, but I make sure each group knows that I'm around. I make sure that they know that I support them. Just an example, and I realize that I have learned that Canfield does not have one of these programs. But both at Upper Sandusky and both at Van Buren, I have built strong relationships supporting the students in VOAG and FFA to the point where they've actually given me awards for being part of that. So I like to support, be visible and help with any of those programs that I possibly can.
Outstanding. Could you describe your relationship with teachers and how they may fit into your administration?
Teachers are very important. I have always said that the backbone of a school district, the success of a school district, is because of the teachers. And I like to make sure the teachers know that I appreciate what they do. I try to include them in decisions. My leadership style is kind of what I call a participatory leadership style. I want everyone to feel that they can participate, that they will be heard, that they will be considered when decisions are being made. But I've had great success with teacher relationships throughout the years. I've had great success with unions that the teachers and both the classified staff are involved in. It's important to build relationships, hear people, and make sure that they know I'm listening. I have built programs where I recognize teachers as the superintendent. I recognize teachers or grade levels for doing things very successfully. I created a Superintendent's Hall of Fame at the end of each year. I might pick a grade level who had outstanding test scores high above any that the state had, or teachers. We had teachers who at the elementary school got a lot of grants to do a lot of educational programs at a certain grade level, and I would recognize those people. You recognize people for the great work they do, and you let them know that you're listening to them.
Outstanding. So, what has your relationship been like with law enforcement, and how would you involve the school resource officers at Canfield?
I've had an excellent relationship with law enforcement in every school district I've worked at. Uh, we have a school resource officer at the Van Buren School District. That came about because we had a community meeting with the community, and we talked about school safety. And this was a couple of years ago when that was becoming a big concern. We listened to the community. We explained to the community that the biggest things that we could do at the Van Buren schools to improve safety and security, there were two things. One was to look at a dedicated school resource officer, and the other one was to increase student wellness and counseling, particularly at the middle school level, but for all of our students. And out of that community meeting, the board agreed to a school resource officer. At the Van Buren schools, we're a rural school, and therefore we did an agreement with the sheriff's department, who we contract with a resource officer who is in our buildings every day that the students are in the building. And that's a very important person. And the school resource officer isn't there just to be the police officer monitoring things that happen. Our resource officer is very involved in training of the staff, very involved in going into the classrooms and making presentations. Our school resource officer has been very instrumental in developing programs for the kids, not only the Red Ribbon, but we've put on programs for parents. That school resource officer, I wouldn't trade him for anything in the world, and I'd bring him with me if I could. But he has built, again, as I'm big on relationships, he has built relationships with the students. He has built relationships with the teachers. He has built relationships with the community. And I think we're all safer for that. And everybody has much more respect for not only him, but law enforcement in general.
Outstanding. Now, have you seen the Canfield school facilities, and what do you think are the priorities in terms of facilities?
Yes, I did. I did just 2 days ago walk the Canfield facilities. And yes, you have aging facilities that are going to need to be addressed. Some of them have structural issues, which are going to have to be seriously looked at. Some of them are buildings that aren't necessarily conducive to the type of learning that students need today. It's going to be a question of determining, prioritizing. I think we need to do a plan and determine exactly what the problems are, and then put together a plan on what it's going to do, what repairs are going to be needed to do, and prioritizing those. But you're going to find, as we have found in the Van Buren School District, you can't afford to do all those repairs. They're going to cost you more than building new would do. So I think we're going to have to also put a plan, which at Van Buren, that was part of our strategic plan that we put together. Facilities was part of the strategic plan, and therefore the community was part of developing that plan, as well as the staff was involved in developing that plan. And that's the goal that they're working toward, is following that strategic plan, which will eventually lead to new buildings and new construction. Canfield Schools is going to have the exact same problem that we have at Van Buren, and that is the fact that you're not going to qualify for a lot of state money to help you build your facilities. So it's going to be very important that the community is involved in this process from the very beginning, determining what the needs are and how best to solve those needs, because the state's not going to help you build new facilities. It's going to take the local community.
Thank you, Tim. What are your ideas for social distancing needs for all of the schools this upcoming school year?
It's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a very challenge. Just for an example, I'm going to tell you, I visited, I had an interview with the Board of Education on Tuesday night. And as I drove around the campus, I saw about 10 to a dozen boys on the basketball court playing basketball. Obviously, there was no social distancing occurring at that point in time. We have to be careful about that. I want people to be able to enjoy and have activities, but social distancing is going to be a challenge if schools fully open for the fall. Obviously, if we go the blended learning, we'll maybe be able to cut class sizes and only have people every now and then. I believe masks could be important. I realize some people struggle and aren't comfortable with those, but the distance is going to be important. And we're just going to have to work hard together to people understand that wearing the mask or the social distancing is as much for you to protect other people as other people are protecting you.
Let's go back to the arts. Recently, band and choir have not been made mandatory in any grade in the middle schools, decreasing the size of the high school music programs. Would you make these mandatory again?
I personally sit here and say that, yes, I will make those mandatory. That's where I will rely on my building principals. I will rely on the people within that middle school, and we would have discussions on that situation. I believe students need to have every opportunity possible. And would I, from the top down, decree that that's what we're going to do? But I would definitely have conversations with stakeholders, and we could work toward that goal.
Thank you. How do you plan to communicate with the public on matters of school concerns?
That's an interesting thing. Again, as part of the strategic plan we did in Van Buren, communications was one of the pieces of our strategic plan. And we surveyed the community as we were developing some of that. And the funny thing is we found out, where do people get their information about the school? And we found out that school newsletters weren't one of the biggest ones. We found out that TV and radio weren't the big ones. What we found out is more people were dealing with social media, and more people were, the biggest one of all was people said they learned about the school by talking to their neighbors. So we have moved forward with more advanced or more modern, for lack of a better word, types of communication. We began to use our website. We redesigned our website. We used Facebook and Twitter. And we also began to use more video communications. I created a place on the Van Buren website that I called the Superintendent's Corner. And that's where I would do short 2 and 3 minute videos to inform the community and to some extent the staff on certain issues that we were dealing with. I would do a video when we had a levy or something that we needed the community to pass. We looked at, when we did the safety meeting with the community, I did a video summarizing that meeting. We were looking at going from a single route bus system to a dual route bus system. Again, I cut a short video explaining what we were looking at the district and how we were going to move forward. So more modern communications we have discovered is some of the best way to get the message out to more of our people in the community.
So Tim, this whole process started a few weeks ago, and you've been a part of it every step of the way, and I feel like I know you really well as the Board of Education. But now we're down to the top 3. And all 3 of you are well prepared, well qualified, with some amazing competencies. So for the hundreds of thousands and millions of people watching tonight, why are you the right candidate for Canfield Schools?
I believe that my strengths meet the needs of the Canfield School District. I believe that the communication, building those strong relationships again with the community, building those strong relationships with the teaching staff, building relationships with the board. those I consider to be one of my greatest strengths, and I look forward to building that and building that support and making everyone feel that they're a part of the Canfield School District so that we can continue to make it better.
Tim, we're going to finish off with this. I'm going to give you a minute or two to inform all of the people that are watching anything else you want them to know about you, your family, your career, or just anything you want to share with them on why you're the guy.
Sure. Well, I'll talk about my family for a little bit. I have a wonderful wife, and we have two daughters. Both daughters have been very successful. Our one daughter is a registered nurse in the Columbus area. Our youngest daughter actually has two doctorates from Ohio Northern University. She has a Juris Doctor degree and a Doctor of Pharmacy degree, and she actually works for the FDA in Washington, D.C. So I kind of get a little heads up on the coronavirus when something's happening. But we're very proud of my family, and they've all worked hard, and I will continue to work hard. And I want to work hard with this district. It's a great district. I'm a hard worker. If I have a problem, I probably spend too much time working at school, but it's hard for me because I'm always striving to make the district better. I'm always striving to meet with people, and I would be very proud to be a part of the Canfield School District and the community in Canfield. I'm coming home to Eastern Ohio.
Tim, that's outstanding. You did a wonderful job tonight. We thank you, and all of the people out there are thanking you for taking this time to share with them about your family, about your career, and why Canfield is important to you. So thank you. Good luck with the rest of the process. You can go ahead and log off at this point. For the rest of you that are still watching, unless, Tim, you want to say anything else?
Yeah, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's listening. I've greatly appreciated the opportunity, and I hope we get the opportunity to work together soon to make the Canfield schools even better. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Have a great evening. And ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that are watching, we are 6 minutes away from our next candidate. Tim Saxton will be joining us, like I said, in 6 minutes. So for those of you that need a quick break, please take the break. We'll be back with you in just a few minutes. Good evening, everyone, and welcome back. Our second candidate is now with us this evening. It is my honor to introduce Tim Saxton. Tim is also an experienced superintendent. He's going to be talking about himself. And a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you put your questions in if you want any of those asked this evening. We have several questions already submitted, but I'm more than happy to see more of your questions. With that, Tim, we'd like you to start off by introducing yourself to the thousands of people that are watching tonight, and why do you want to be at Canfield Schools? Go ahead.
Well, good evening, everyone. And once again, I'm Tim Saxton. I'm currently the superintendent in the West Branch Local School District. I've got 11 years experience as a superintendent, several years experience as a building principal and assistant principal. I worked in the special education field as a teacher and also in the coaching ranks as well. I am a 1985 Canfield graduate, so a shout out to the class of 85 out there that may be watching, and welcome the opportunity to get back to the Canfield Local School District where I truly got my start. I've done a lot of great things in several districts that I've worked in with a lot of great people, and look forward to potentially working with the students, parents, teachers, administrators, and community in the Canfield Local Schools.
Tim, thank you for that start. Let's begin with the first question from the community. At your current position, how did you make special education a priority?
So as I stated, I'm a former special education teacher. Got my start in Youngstown City Schools teaching special education and moved on to another district. So special education is I guess, close to my heart in terms of what I believe is important for students in the school system. And every student population is different, and every student is different in terms of the needs that they may have. And I think that from the standpoint of making it a priority, it has to be a priority, not only because it's law, but obviously because people who are working with students who have been identified as special needs need additional assistance on a daily basis, weekly basis, and yearly basis. And In West Branch, we focused in on those individual student needs and have a host of great intervention specialists, great educational aides, and programming that helps students truly find their niche. And I think that's ultimately important because, as we all know, students across the Canfield schools, across the West Branch schools where I currently am, have different interests and capabilities. And I think you have to find the potential capability that that student has, and interest, and so on, and further it when you're working with students.
So Tim, let's talk collaboration a little bit. At West Branch Schools, how did you work with both educators and the community to improve your schools?
So one of the things that we have in place at West Branch is the district leadership team, and that's part of the Ohio improvement process. And not that we have to do or be in the Ohio improvement process. It was in place when I arrived, and we've actually moved away from that in terms of the requirement to be in it, but we decided to keep that process in place. So we meet monthly, talk about the goals that the district has in terms of academics, culture, and any related items that might fall into place as far as innovative programming that we're looking at, or classroom instruction, or just the general needs of the district. So we do that on a monthly basis. As far as collaboration with folks outside of the school realm, we also bring in folks that may be part of the ministerial association, a parent group or parent advisory, and keep those folks informed in terms of that district leadership team and their participation. Just recently at West Branch, we went through a strategic planning process, and we had members of those groups, both parents, teaching staff, administrative staff, ministerial association representation, community representation, to help form the goals and the strategies that we are operating on right now under our strategic plan. So I think, getting all those folks in, having some very serious conversations about what it is that you want your school district to look like, and how you can better prepare your students for success in the future.
Thank you, Tim. Here's a question that obviously is important to everyone in the community. So the fall of 2020 is going to be coming, and it looks like we're going to have some kind of blended remote learning situation in our schools due to COVID-19. What are your proposed recommendations on how that should look like for this school district?
So knowing what I know about Canfield, and also knowing what I have in my hands at this point, a draft document came out yesterday, was shared across the state, and I know that the media had put out several articles about that draft document as well. There are a lot of recommendations right now in that document that share with school districts and school administrators, teachers, parents, and so on, what that might look like in the fall. And frankly, it's going to be a lot different than what we're accustomed to. I know that people are aware of that, but truly it's going to be something that we have never seen before. In preparation for the fall, I think that we are going to see a list of best practices in terms of students and staff wearing masks, obviously complete and total sanitation of buildings and classrooms on a daily and weekly basis. I think we're going to have to maintain that social distancing piece until we're told that we don't necessarily have to. But I think that all those things are going to play into how we look at the start of the school year. There are a lot of questions that we're going to have to answer in terms of cafeteria utilization, transportation utilization, hallways, lockers, classroom cubbies for our young students as well. And I think that, getting in as the new superintendent, those conversations with the administrative team, the teaching staff, our classified staff, and our parent groups are going to be integral in planning for the fall opening. Ultimately, we're going to have to come up with a plan that ensures the safety and health of our student population.
Tim, what has your relationship been like with the law enforcement officials in your West Branch district, and how will you involve the school resource officers here at Canfield?
So the West Branch Local School District is a very large district geographically. We have over 120 miles square that we serve here. So it's made up of several police districts and/or falls under the watch of the Columbiana County Sheriffs. We're in 2 counties primarily. So we've partnered with the Goshen Police District here. We have an SRO that we work with our local township trustees and employ, and that that SRO is brought into my administrative team meetings. He's brought into our safety team meetings, and we believe that that partnership has to be strong, consistent, and collaborative, so that when we do need guidance in situations that may have occurred or might occur, or if we're just looking to be proactive to keep our students safe, that conversation has to be able to take place and be able to take place quickly with our SRO, or in the case of Columbiana County, with our sheriff's deputy that we have on the grounds on a daily basis. So I've said it before and I'll say it again, safety has always been a priority of mine. I personally went through Alice training and have implemented safety initiatives in the districts that I've been in and currently am in. I think if you ask anyone out here, we have added to the security of our buildings by initiating some programming that allows us to maintain those security. And actually right now we're having cameras installed in our buildings through a grant process that we entered last year. So ultimately that collaboration has to be there. If you don't have it, you're going to run into situations where you wish you did have it. And ultimately, I have a lot of respect for the men and ladies in blue. I actually have a close relationship with our SRO. And once again, he knows that he can come in, talk to me. I can call him at any time or text him if I have questions. And that's primarily how we operate.
That is great. Earlier in the conversation, when you first discussed why
Not waving at everyone, I'm turning my lights back on. We're under a sensor here that turns my lights off if I'm not moving. So I guess I have to move a little more.
There you go.
Sorry, Dan, you go ahead. Please.
Well, we appreciate the hand gestures. I think that's great. So Tim, earlier you touched about this a little bit in your opening answer, but the community is asking for a little bit more detail on why do you want to leave your current district?
So, I've had that question proposed to me a couple different times here in the last 2 weeks, and actually just had that conversation with a couple members of the staff here at West Branch. I know my spouse has been hit up with that question, and I have as well, and people are wondering. Bottom line is I'm a Canfield grad. There was an opportunity a few years back when the position opened up, and I had talked to some folks in Canfield and the surrounding area about applying. It just wasn't the right time for me. I think right now is a great time for me. And I think because of my ties to the community and really because I am a graduate is truly the reason why I jumped into this search and put my hat in the ring. I think that based on my experiences as a student in Canfield, and I point back to the great teachers that I had, great coaches that I had, and the programs that I was involved in. Without my insertion into programs and as far as athletics were concerned, and really I harken back, and I've said this several times, my participation with Mr. Zambrini and Ms. Kircher in the Canfield Players, I wouldn't be the person that I am today and be able to do what I do effectively without the influences that I had as a student in Canfield.
Tim, I had an honor to come up and have 6 different focus group meetings with teachers, with staff, and with community members here in Canfield. As a whole, they understand the Canfield schools are right now in the top 5% performance-wise in the state of Ohio. So how will you as superintendent take Canfield School to the next level?
So I think the first thing you want to do is come in and examine the things that are going on, take a step back and analyze the data, but at the same time, keep in mind the common sense role of if it's not broken, don't fix it. And I think that ultimately knowing what I know about Canfield and the fact that it is a top performing school district, and obviously we want to continue to make that situation plain and clear for our students and our parents and anyone really looking to move into the Canfield communities because of the school district. That is something that we do not want to see a backslide on. So ultimately, I think you have to continue the programs that are successful, analyze the programs that maybe are on the brink and need an additional push, but also look and see what things from the standpoint of the data that was presented, specifically the Ohio Department of Education report card, that maybe shows that there needs some tweaking in specific areas. And I would look at the report card in terms of the progress component. There are some things in terms of the lowest 20% in terms of achievement at the Canfield schools that we need to push harder. Set some expectations and develop the programming in that respect so that we can get and continue to be in that top 1%.
Well, let's add to that a little bit more. So if you could improve one thing immediately in Canfield, it could be report card scores, it could be anything about the district, what would it be?
I think ultimately, if we're not talking about academics, for sure the focus needs to be ultimately there. And specifically those areas that I looked at, I would look at what we're doing in terms of the reading, um, programming at the lower levels. The reading success and K3 component is important, and we need to make sure that our young readers are successful. And if they're struggling, we have the things in place to make sure that struggle is eased upon them. I know as a young student, there were times where I struggled to read. And I think that with the right person and the right program and that extra touch, you'll see improvement. I also think that, overall, once again, special education, we talked a little bit about already. That's a primary component. And when you talk about the lowest 20% in terms of achievement, I think it's something that we have to focus in on and see what it is that we're doing, and help our struggling students, whether they are labeled in terms of a special needs population or maybe just at risk. Everybody needs a little help. And like I said, I point back to my own experience. There were things that I did well and there were things that I struggled with. And I think we all fall into that category in some respect. And knowing that and knowing what kids deal with on a daily basis, points the direction in terms of what we need to do as educators to improve across the board. I think also just to push things in the right direction and continue that direction, and get us from the top 5 to the top 1, ultimately that's the goal that I would have as a superintendent. And I'm pretty certain that the educators and the administrators and the parents in the community would agree. That's where we want to be. Canfield is one of the best. Let's make it the best.
So Tim, what would you consider to be your greatest assets and abilities as a leader?
So I think, and I'll repeat what I've said a couple times over, I think my demeanor overall is something that is a strength of mine. I'm a very patient person. I don't easily get upset. And I think that, realistically, it's something that helps me guide and administer programming. I think that ultimately being able to sit down and talk through a situation and collaborate with those that are involved is also a strength. And I think just being able to take a step back, have that patience in terms of what's going on in front of me, and make the right and correct decision in the best interest of students. So ultimately, my demeanor, my ability to collaborate, and obviously my patience are three things that come to mind.
So Tim, how committed are you in keeping the outstanding music education programs at the high school and middle school levels? And what are your thoughts on expanding music in schools and not just state standards?
So I will say this: I can sing. I cannot dance. Well, maybe a little bit. I did not play an instrument, but I have appreciation for those that do. And I think that anytime you look at the fine arts programming in any school district, that tells you a little bit about, or a lot about what's going on within that district. Typically, what I've seen in my career is the fine arts students that are involved in band, choir, drama, musicals are typically your best students. And I guess I could point further to say that the students that are involved in any extracurricular activity, whether it is an art-based extracurricular or athletic, those are the students that you see excel. And I think that you have to continue those programs to the best of your ability. And I know that for years, the pointer was on programs like music and band and so on. And people said, well, let's cut those programs first. And my response has always been that's a big mistake. I think you have the largest participation of students across the board in those programs. And I think it's something that you have to emphasize and really use to your advantage, because those are the things that you want students to do and shine in, and then portray your district in a great light above and beyond the academic piece.
So Tim, I talked about many, many people watching tonight, and it's just not teachers, it's just not parents. We actually have students who are with us this evening. And so a student has posed this question to you: what will you do to assure the safety of every student in every building?
So, I first and foremost, I, as a parent, as a teacher, as an educator, as a coach, I cannot make promises that nothing is going to happen in any way, shape, or form. That's the realistic problem we live in as in society. But I can tell you this. I'll go back to what I've already said. In every district that I have worked in, both as a teacher, an administrator, a building level administrator, now superintendent, safety has been a priority for me because I recognize the fact that when parents send their students off to school every morning, they definitely want to see them come home in the same way. And if that's not a priority, then I don't know what is. I think that realistically, you have to take a look at your facilities. And if you have to make improvements to those facilities to ensure that if your building or classroom or area has to be locked down for any length of time, that you are prepared. I think that your staff and your students have to be trained accordingly so that if you do have to lock down and or evacuate, that you are trained. I have run scenario after scenario in terms of safety and security. We have run district-wide level events in terms of evacuation and planning and reunification here at West Branch and in former districts that I worked in. I think ultimately it comes down to preparation, planning, and execution of those types of things so that everyone is prepared in case that active shooter or intruder or whatever scenario plays out, you are prepared. I'll take a step further. I think ultimately you have to have the things in place to aid students. The governor made it a priority last year in terms of student success and wellness monies that he provided to school districts around the state. We've made it a priority here at West Branch to add additional counseling and psychological services so that people have the ability to go talk through issues that they have. No student should walk to school, be transported to school, be dropped off at school, however you want to say that, and feel threatened. There were situations when I was a young student that I felt like I was being bullied. And I think realistically, having the ability to talk to other people about the situation that you're in and gaining the confidence to move forward. Once again, those mental health dollars that the governor has provided are priceless. And I think a combination of everything that I've mentioned ensures that the safety and security of the students in Canfield is a priority.
So, Tim, it's interesting that you just talk about the governor and money. So let's come to this next question. With the state already announcing that there's going to be a cut of $675,000 to the Canfield School District next year, right, what are your thoughts on how to fill that gap?
So I think ultimately the first thing you have to do is see, what areas, if any, can be cut from the get-go. And the governor made that announcement. And I think that was a punch to the gut of a lot of our school boards and administrators and superintendents and treasurers around the state. People are watching what's going on, and we know that he had to do something in terms of a reduction in spending. If you look closely at the timing of this, a lot of the negotiated agreements that are in place with your employees don't allow for you to reduce in very many areas. Sometimes it takes some negotiation and some talking in terms of what it is that you can do to really stem the tide of those cuts. So, we're going to be reaching across the table and saying, okay, help us out. What is it that we can reduce in terms of spending that won't touch students? And I think ultimately, whenever you do have to reduce anything, budgetary constraints, et cetera, that you do that as far away from student operations as you can. It's difficult, but sometimes necessary. And that's a pretty big number to deal with in terms of your budget. And I think that's going to be a lot of discussion between the treasurer, the superintendent, the board, and really the staff as well to try to come up with potential reductions across the board that may stem the tide.
Thank you. So can you compare the changes in the Canfield system from the time that you were a student to now? What has changed for the better and what has changed for the worse?
Well, for the better, I would say that there's a lot more opportunity for students from the traditional schooling that obviously I went through. And I think that, while we hold on to a lot of those traditions and they are important, and there is a set of guidelines that governs what we do across the board from the State Department of Education, but it also allows for that those changes and the subtle innovations that allow a school district to develop into something that is better than the original version, I guess, if you want to go back to the mid 80s. I still think that the staff, the parents, the students are truly invested, and I've had children that have competed against the Canfield schools athletic teams. I've had the fortune to be in the buildings at different times for different events. A lot hasn't changed. Let's be honest. And I'm sure I could say the same thing to someone who graduated at the same time from West Branch. There are a lot of similarities in terms of when you walk into that gym, or you walk into the cafeteria, or you walk through the hallways, many things are the same. And I got a chance to tour a couple of the buildings the other night with the board. There is a lot of things that have remained the same. And I think that in itself shows you what Canfield is all about. That tradition of excellence, that tradition in terms of academics and athletics and extracurricular activities is hugely important. And that's what draws me to this position. As far as change goes, obviously things have increased in terms of size. There are a lot more houses in Canfield than there were when I was there. So that expansion in the community and really just the district as itself shows that people want to come to Canfield. They want to come there because it's a safe community, it's a solid school system, and there are a lot of great things that happen in and around Canfield that people can be proud of. So I think in that respect, the expansion of the village and the township and the school system as a whole all play an integral part of how things have changed for the positive.
So, Tim, you've done a nice job tonight in explaining the positives of Canfield, what is so neat and exciting about coming back. But you're coming back home. You're coming back to a school that you graduated from.
Sure.
What challenges are you going to face personally by coming back to the school that you graduated from?
Well, I obviously, having been gone for a few years, just a few, from when I did leave, I think that's a challenge from the start. But I think any superintendent who is moving from one position to another has an entry plan that they initiate when they go into a new school system or school district. I've outlined an entry plan that I would put into place immediately in August, and obviously before that, if allowed, so that we can start having those conversations in terms of what it is that we need to get done immediately, short-term and then obviously long-term goals. From my standpoint, I don't see a disadvantage at this point. I'm a little older than I was when I left there, and I think that from a maturity standpoint and from a knowledge standpoint, my experiences over the last several years, a little too many than I would really want to talk about, prepare me. And I think that having those experiences in both a large school district versus a smaller school district, a rural, a suburban, and urban school district have given me the perspectives I need to come back home truly and do what I can in the best interest of the Canfield community and specifically its students.
So, Tim, you've talked a little bit about special education, and the community thanks you for your concern with special ed. But Canfield has a broad range of needs. How would you describe the importance of improving support for the rigorous academic needs and support services for our high achieving and gifted students?
I think that ultimately, when you talk about your high end, high expectation, well-rounded and strongly driven students, sometimes that's a difficult conversation to have. And I think that with the help of the county consultants at the ESC, which is not very far from the home base there in Canfield, with the help of the coordinators and the teachers and the counselors on staff, I think that you can create a strong plan and further the plan that's in place to serve the students who are gifted and talented in different areas so that they can further their careers along in terms of academics. One of the things we identified here at West Branch when I arrived 4 years ago was the need for AP classes, the need for furtherance of our college credit program, and support of that, because I know there was a lot of controversy surrounding that and the fact that individual districts were paying out of their treasury for college credit plus classes. as a superintendent and treasurer, you take a hit in terms of that cost and the financial burden that you bear for an unfunded mandate. But at the same time, as a parent of a student who has benefited from College Credit Plus, I can tell you that it is a strong program, and it is an inherent program that we need to further along. I think that any program that we can help put in place for our students at the top end is going to benefit the district ultimately, because we want those students to achieve, and then we want them to come back, and we want them to embrace the community that they left, and hopefully will come back and contribute to. So we want to make sure that those folks are served.
Tim, we got time for a couple more questions. As good as Canfield schools are now, are you willing to address the weaknesses of the school district, even when it's awkward or not well received?
So I'm not the type of person, and I've learned this over time, and I said this with my discussion with the board and the administrative group. Having been a superintendent for several years and a building principal, how I would act and how I would, I guess, arrive at decisions and also how I would approach things is a lot different these days than it was 11, 12, 15 years ago. I have had very difficult situations that I have dealt with and really am currently dealing with in my career. I don't shy away from calling it like it is. I don't shy away from having difficult conversations in the face of adversity. And I think, once again, it goes back to something I've already said. If a decision that I make makes things better, ultimately for the school, for the students, and for the community, then so be it. As a superintendent, and I said this before in one of my interviews, you're either the hero or you're the villain. And in some cases, you're going to be well respected and well liked in terms of things that you've decided. And when you face those difficult decisions, you're not going to be well liked. And I understand that. I accept that. But I think ultimately it goes back again to what I've said. You have to make the decisions, confront those negative things that are going on head on, and ultimately fix the things that need fixing. But don't touch the things that don't.
So, Tim, how do you plan to communicate with the public on matters of school concern?
So one of the things, once again, I learned over the course of several concerns or incidents in my office in terms of a situation that might be developing or going on in terms of the communication, as opposed to a student texting or taking a picture or sending it to their parents before we've had a chance to even address it. So we battle that, but at the same time, I think you can collaborate with that and say, listen, we've got an incident going on. We are investigating it, and it will be handled appropriately, both by our administration and in conjunction with the police if necessary.
Hold on, Tim. We have a technical difficulty right now.
Okay, I guess we're live. Hopefully YouTube stays stable. It picked an awfully bad time for YouTube to completely crash, although I did get some text, and I guess I guess it worked for a little while for a few people, and then the rest of us it crashed. So I'm not sure how all that worked out, but I think we're good now. We'll let Tim finish up. I don't know, Dan, do we know what time? Do we know what time?
So for those of you that are watching, we're going to go about another 3 to 4 minutes with Tim Saxton. We're going to take about a 5-minute break after that. And then our third candidate who we're communicating on the side will be ready to go. So whenever you're ready for us, David, we'll get back started.
Yep, go ahead. I'll go ahead and drop off. Thanks.
All right, ladies and gentlemen.
Sorry about the technical issues.
Not a problem. Thank you.
And ladies and gentlemen, we do apologize for the technical issues, but it was beyond our control, and we're back at it. So, Tim, let's go back to the question that you were answering when YouTube went out, and that was, how do you plan to communicate with the public on matters on matters of school concern? You were able to get a lot of that question out. Maybe summarize in a quick minute on your plan.
So I think that one of the things that is great about Canfield is the fact that their communication efforts are outstanding. I think that to continue that, I would utilize the tools that are already there, obviously augment those accordingly. but I think I was focusing more or less in terms of an item of concern that was relative to safety. And I think that, in any district and any superintendent or principal, et cetera, will tell you that, they don't want information to flow from the wrong people in the wrong direction. And it should be initiated by the superintendent and his administrative team if there's an item of concern that has to go out to the public, especially if you're talking about safety and security, et cetera. And that needs to be immediate. And I think it has to be something that summarizes things like I said earlier, which is just this. An incident occurred, it's being investigated. We're working with our administrative team, our in-house SROs, and potentially the sheriff's department if necessary to solve the problem at hand. Sometimes you don't have to go to that extent, but I think that a lot of times you're better safe than sorry, and realistically, that's the kind of relationship we have here at West Branch with our SRO. He can be here on a moment's notice and be involved in the discussion so that we have ample time to communicate to parents in terms of an item of concern specific to safety. For other things, I think once again the communication efforts that the Canfield Schools does, it's multi-tiered, multi-layered, and I think that we would continue that obviously because that's what people expect, and I think for the residents have come to expect that, from your students to parents to community members, and we have a communications plan that's already in place, and I would take advantage of.
So, Tim, the final question tonight. This has been quite the process. We've gotten to know each other quite a bit here because we've been involved here for a few weeks. So from the number of candidates we had, we've got it now down to the top three. And
Sure.
all three are outstanding candidates with some great experiences. Please tell the many people watching, why should you be the one picked?
So I ask that question often to folks that interview with my team, and I will certainly follow that. That is actually the last question I always come up with in terms of teacher candidates, administrative candidates, and so on. And I want to know why you, why me, why should I be the next superintendent in Canfield? And I'll go back to what I started with. I'm from there. I'm a Canfield graduate. The main reason why I have put myself into this search process is simply that. I want to go back to where I came from, contribute accordingly in the way that I was molded through the teachers and the coaches and the administrators and the folks that I have come in contact with across the district. And I shared with someone today that a very good friend of mine, best man in my wedding, actually, his mom was a bus driver and loved doing what she did. And I saw that in her and have come to realize that no matter what position a person holds within the Canfield schools, they're important to a student on a daily basis. And I think that knowing that and knowing the experiences that I have make me the candidate that comes out on top. I think ultimately, from my experience as a student to a teacher to a coach to a principal and now superintendent have put me in a position where I can contribute immediately to use what you've already said in terms of hit the ground running and jump into it with the strong desire to continue the tradition of excellence that's been established and make us the best district in the state.
So, Tim, outstanding job this evening. Thank you for your patience as we've worked with the technical difficulties. What would you like to say if you had just another minute to share with this community?
Well, I would say, it's always enjoyable to look back and see what Canfield is doing. I used a lot of things in discussion with mentors of mine, both principals, mentors. I go back to Mrs. Barone, who was a principal at the school, Mr. Zambrini, who was a teacher of mine and a superintendent. In conversations with them, I always picked their brains about what the best things were about Canfield and what they had done at that time to make things better. And even getting to know the current administration and staff and former board members that were involved were teachers of mine and coaches. I look forward to coming back to the Canfield schools, and as always, it's always a great time to be a Cardinal.
Tim, thank you. Great job again tonight, and we wish you the best through this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You too. Have a great evening. And ladies and gentlemen, let me remind you again that with each candidate, you can provide feedback. That feedback can be done through the YouTube channel. There's a link there on Facebook, as well as canfieldschools.net. Currently, the time is 7:42, ladies and gentlemen. Let's plan to come back at 7:50 for our third and final candidate, Mr. Joel Knoll. So again, in 8 minutes, 7:50, we'll begin our final candidate. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Again, we apologize for the technical difficulties we had earlier, certainly out of our control when Google or YouTube goes down like that, but we appreciate the patience of our candidates, and it's an honor to introduce the third candidate of the evening, Joe Knoll. Joe is another very experienced administrator and superintendent up here in Northeast Ohio. And to start this section of the evening, Joe, I'm going to ask you to talk about yourself for about 3 or 4 minutes.
All right, awesome. Well, hey, good evening, Canfield. It's a pleasure to be here. Just a couple things personally. Been married 21 years to my beautiful wife, Jennifer. Was a classmate of mine and now my soulmate, which is really awesome. We have 2 kids. I have a 19-year-old daughter, Addison, and a 16-year-old son, Andrew. Enjoy being outside, doing a little fishing and golfing when we can find the time to do that. On a personal level, or a professional level, I should say, got my first teaching job in Lorain. And that name might ring a bell for some of you that know that your high school principal is a Lorain guy. Calls himself the Lorain legend, and rightly so. Spent 12 years up in Lorain City, teaching math, coaching football, track, basketball, and then being an administrator. I had a great opportunity to come back to this area to serve actually Mahoney County as the principal at West Branch High School for 9 years. Moved from there to the Mahoney County Educational Service Center, just an awesome opportunity with some great people. Served there for 2 years. And to be honest with you, that's kind of when I really got to know a lot more about Canfield, which was a good experience for me. And then the door opened here at Marlington, which is my alma mater. So applied for this job and was blessed to be able to serve here. This would be 9 years here as superintendent.
So, Joe, the first question from the community is, why do you want to leave Marlington Schools?
Well, that's a good question. I had a good conversation with your board about that last night. I told the Canfield board it would take an amazing opportunity for me to leave here at Marlington, and I believe that Canfield is it. I look at the focus of academics, which is your number one priority in Canfield. I look at a priority with athletics and the fine arts, band and choir. There's a definite community support in Canfield, which is intriguing to me. And I guess for me, it's the opportunities that I see that are here, opportunities to improve teaching and learning, to integrate some technology. I'm a big STEAM guy, and we've done a lot of great things here in that arena, and would like to see that maybe transfer over to Canfield. And I guess finally for me, I see a need for some healing and unity in the district, and I think I have some gifts and talents that could be helpful to do that.
So, Tim, you just mentioned about some of the technology things from your district. So, how did you actually improve technology at Marlington Schools?
Sure. Well, when I walked in the door 9 years ago, technology was not here. So we started implementing a one-to-one process. We began with our middle school with iPads. And then, of course, when they became high schoolers, you had to have something there for them. So then that became the MacBook Air. And then we've come back and we've got our elementary kids engaged as well. And it's not just using technology as a learning tool, but it's using the whole concept of a blending learning format. This technology is a tool for teachers. Doesn't take the place of a teacher, but it's a teaching tool. So that blended learning model has been awesome for us. You know, we're basically 3-12, one-to-one, and our K2 kiddos, you know, kind of work with them in their classrooms. But it's been an awesome transition for us here at Marlington. And to be honest with you, when this pandemic hit, it was a huge benefit for us and our success of being able to transfer right into that world.
So, Joe, if you would, what would you consider to be your greatest assets and abilities as a leader?
Okay. I think for me, I work hard on being a good communicator. I think it's important to, first of all, set the message, make sure it's articulated to all the stakeholders in your community. So for me, I try to use every mode of communication that I can. I'm big on newsletters that go out to the community. We're going to be big on newsletters coming out from our building principals as well. I like to do, bi-weekly updates to the community. I do something called Tuesdays with Mr. Knoll, where it's just an opportunity to highlight all the great things that are going on in the district. In any way that I can get the message out in a positive way, we're going to do, including social media. I kind of help run the page here in our district. I'm not a social media guru, but I enjoy taking pictures, getting pictures, and posting them. So I would say one of my biggest assets is communicating. And to be honest with you, if you don't toot your own horn as a school district, folks aren't going to do it for you. So that's going to be a priority for me.
Outstanding. So let's talk a little specifically about some of the things at Canfield Schools.
Mhm.
So how do you make special education a priority?
Yeah. Well, this is a passion of mine because I have a son with special abilities. And, you kind of always wonder and ask yourself, why did the good Lord bless you with a child that comes with some of those challenges? And for me, I think it's made me a better superintendent. I'm able to take what I learned from home and from my wife as we're trying to work through the issues that come up, and especially the parents out there. I mean, we understand, we feel there's good days, but then there's tough days as well. So for me, I think I bring an interesting perspective that I know that world. And I would hope being able to communicate and talk to parents with kids with special abilities would be an asset. I sure hope it will be. I know it has been here. Parents know my situation and they're not afraid to call and, kind of run some things by us. So for me, the good things that are occurring in Canfield, my hope would be in that special ed world to help those things grow and get better and meet the needs of those kids and any parent concerns.
Outstanding. Joe, one of the biggest things right now that all of us are interested about is what will school look like next year? And given the likelihood that fall 2020 is going to have maybe a blended remote learning type of opportunity due to COVID-19, what are your proposed recommendations on how that's going to look like for Canfield Schools?
Yeah, I saw some of the reset and restart information that came out today. And first of all, I like some of those ideas, about wearing masks, taking temperatures, the social distancing piece. One of my concerns is transportation, and they kind of talk a little bit about that, but it's more guidelines than regulations. But I guess for me, I kind of see it maybe a couple different ways. Number one, we come back to school just like we left and everything's fine and we just continue doing school. Or I can see it maybe being like what we have now, where it's all remote and we got to go get them. For me, in this world that we're in right now, I have two areas of concern: K2 and special needs kids. Like my son, I know at home, I know what we're dealing with as parents and our teachers trying to help. So I guess for me, and I just put a survey out actually to our parents to ask them, how are we doing with this whole remote learning thing? So I'd be interested in the parent perspective in Canfield as well. But for me, I guess if I had to say what's school going to look like come fall, I would say we're going to try to continue with remote learning for the grades that it's working for. And I'm hoping it would be 3 through 12. And maybe K2 kiddos we would need to bring in our special needs kiddos as well. And then be able to basically separate those groups into the two elementary schools, middle school, and or high school. That's kind of how I'm envisioning it as I sit here tonight. Still a lot of work to do, but I think there's some merit that those K2 parents and kids really just need a little more face-to-face instruction. And our special needs kids need that as well.
Excellent. So how committed are you in keeping the outstanding music educational programs at the high school and middle school levels? And what are your thoughts on expanding music in schools and not just state standards?
Sure. I actually got a chance to see the Canfield Band a couple years ago at a halftime show, and they were strong and mighty. I'm a big advocate for any type of fine arts program, anything that's getting kids connected to school. To me, that is the overriding theme. It's getting connected and being a part of something. Musicals. Allegedly, I participated in a musical here in Arlington a couple years ago. I won't tell you that they made me dress up as a woman, talk like a woman, and go around on roller skates. So you might know which musical that was. But what an awesome experience for me personally to be involved in that. I got to see all the time and the effort the kids put into this, and the directors, just amazing. For me, as far as what it looks like in the school, I would hope that we would be looking at electives in the fine arts type of world when it comes to music. And I know you guys are strong in the speech and debate and all those other kind of good things, but music specifically, I'd be interested to see what other types of electives based on needs and wants of the kids in the building that we might be able to offer, looking at middle school and high school.
There's a lot of people watching tonight, and it's just not staff, it's just not parents. We also have students watching. So
Right.
Here is a question from a student.
Awesome.
What will you do to assure the safety of every student in every building?
Sure. Well, the safety and well-being of our staff and students is number one priority, just hands down. I have a special passion for school safety. I've had a lot of training back in my days in Lorraine in the early 90s. We had that SRO when people didn't know what that even meant back in the day. So for me, it's been huge. I'm on our Stark County Safety Task Force here, which has been just an invaluable experience. So for kids, to answer that question specifically, I'm going to do, with help of the Canfield PD, some vulnerability assessments of all of our buildings, and we're going to spend some time on that. Number one, we're going to take a look to see if there are any issues that need to be resolved. All of our buildings are going to have building safety teams, and we're also going to have threat assessment teams, which we started here in Arlington a couple years ago. So we're going to put those things in place. I know a lot of people say, hey, it can't happen here. But you know what? We have middle school kids, high school kids. These types of things do come up, and we need to be prepared for them. So, using our vulnerability threat assessments, using our Canfield PD SROs that are involved, building level type of teams, we're going to assess our buildings and see if there's any things that need to be resolved so our kids feel safe coming to school.
Awesome. And Joe, the questions from students keep on coming. From another student.
All right.
All right. What have you done to help promote STEM and STEAM on the high school level to provide motivated individuals as they go out into the real world?
Okay, well, we're going to give this kid an A for today, all right? Because this is what I love. I'm passionate about this. So at the high school, a couple of years ago, we started an engineering project lead the way program that's all STEM related. I was able to get $300,000 in grants, got the place built, just kind of remodeled, got donations from our community, and we have a career tech engineering program up and running at the high school. That's kind of where we started. Just staying right there, that has now turned into an awesome teacher, Mr. Denny, who now has a robotics club up and running. Okay. We have things here at the middle school as well. We have Gateway to Technology here at the middle school. So it's a nice little feeder for those kids that are hands-on, critical thinking, problem solvers. That's what we're looking for as we prepare kids for 21st century learning and workforce. And our last hurrah here has been adding STEAM to the elementary school. And it has been awesome. I have a great gal, Miss Horning, that's been running that. It's amazing to see kindergartners and first graders doing fun things and cool things and not worrying about if it doesn't work. Just unbelievable. This is something I'm real passionate about, and whatever we can do to incorporate it, increase it, build upon it at Canfield, I'm all in on that.
Awesome. All right, Joe, what has been your relationship with law enforcement agencies there in Marlington? And how would you involve the school resource officers in Canfield?
Sure. Like I said, I'm a member of the Stark County Safety Task Force. There's, like, I think, 3 superintendents, Sheriff's Department, FBI, those types of things. So that experience has been awesome. I like to say that we're one of the leaders when it comes to school safety. I take a lot of pride in that. Like I said, I'm very passionate about it. So I have a great relationship with the Stark County Sheriff, who's really our locale. We do have folks out of Marlboro PD, which have been very helpful to us as well when it comes to safety training. As far as the SRO goes, I'm big on this heartening versus hardening idea. The hardening piece is the SRO with the gun and the handcuffs, doing things to fortify your building. And I get that. And the SRO plays a role in all 3 of the buckets, which I call deter, detect, and defend. The heartening piece of this whole thing to me, though, is what's most important: making connections and having relationships with kids. And I expect my SROs not to just be that hardening person, but the heartening one. They teach DARE. They work with kids in the Gamers Club. They work with kids in the Breakfast Club. They go to our dances. They're in classrooms. They're around this community. Our SROs are just another educator really in this district. And I have 2, and I've got 2 awesome ones here. They both live in the district, which is another plus, have kids here. That relationship that I have with both of them is very strong. They've helped me through this whole idea of school safety to get our district where we need to be. And I would hope to bring that to Canfield if it's not there right now, but to make it better, bigger, and stronger in Canfield.
Joe, let's talk about something important with Canfield. Obviously, this has been a difficult time for the state of Ohio budgeting wise. And so the state has already announced that there's going to be a cut of $675,000 to Canfield schools next year. What thoughts do you have about how to fill that gap?
Okay. Well, here's the good news. That's the bad news, but the good news is the federal dollars through the CARES Fund came in at about 163, I think, for Canfield. So at the end of the day, it's not good, but it's about $500,000. The perspective I'm taking is just take a deep breath, hit the pause button, and let's take a look at what we have. The first thing I can say about Canfield is financially, your treasurer, Ms. Prince, and Board of Education has done an excellent job with the finances at Canfield. Now, with all that being said, 500,000 was just cut 1, I believe, of more to come, and probably even starting in July. So to me, it's a time to look at staffing and say, okay, if people are retiring or somebody's resigning and moving on, is there a way to redistribute what we're doing? Not cut programming, not cut people, but is there a way to kind of soften the blow by looking for people through attrition that have left? I would say that's the first place to start, and not overreact, but be thinking, be proactive, but look at what you can do with current staff that might be leaving through attrition to see if you can kind of absorb some or a majority of those costs.
Thank you, Joe. Now, there are times that there are school concerns or school issues that happen within a district. How do you plan to communicate with the public on matters of school concern?
Yeah. If there is a school safety issue that needs to be put out to the public, that is going to be the number 1 priority for me. I'm not a person that believes in putting things under the rug or not dealing with issues when they arise. We've had some issues here, to be honest with you, that we've had to address and deal with. And I know, like a lot of people say, it's not going to happen here, but I go back to we're middle school and high school kids, and sometimes we make bad decisions along the way. So for me, you use the venues that are easy and quick, some type of all-call system, which I'm sure Canfield has, very similar to other superintendents. If letters need to go home from either building principals or me as superintendent, that communication is also going to go home. There might be times where it's time to get people together in a room, whenever that day comes, and have a conversation with parents as well. But I think the important thing is you get out in front of it, you be open and honest and transparent with your community. It might be a tough scenario you're dealing with, but I think people are going to respect you more in the long run if you go about business that way.
Joe, over the past few weeks and through this process, we have appreciated all the research that you've done about the Canfield School and the Canfield community. So, as you looked at the Canfield School report card, how would you improve on our excellence?
Well, when you're hitting 23 out of 24 indicators, I mean, that's awesome. I mean, that's the first place I start. There is some need with that K-3 literacy piece, with being on track and off track as far as your kindergartners coming up through. So I think there needs to be probably some concerted effort maybe in that area, in that K-3 literacy piece, just to see what's going on, making sure we have the resources maybe that those elementary teachers need, or some recommendations that they might have to help with that. But I mean, that report card's strong. And obviously, if I'm chosen to be the man there, that's going to be a priority moving forward. But and I will just say this: I've said this many times here. We are more than just a score. That report card is a tool, but it doesn't show all the progress that's being made in a district. I know we get compared to it. I know it's part of the ball game, but there are a lot of other great things that Canfield does that needs to be talked about, publicized, appreciated, and praised as well.
Joe, we are blessed. We got more students coming in with questions.
All right, go ahead.
Here's another student. How do you, as a superintendent, support students in different tracks, vocational, college preparatory, and general academics?
That's a great question. First of all, you guys have a great career center right down the street from you. And I know a lot of people that work there. To me, I'm a big career tech guy. I think it's important to have those programs. I mean, when you have kids that are awesome with their hands and love that type of work, there are jobs out there for career tech kids. And we can't forget about that group of kids in our school district. You also want to target and keep working on those kids that are going to college. And I know that's a big percent in Canfield. You want to keep offering them programs. You want to keep offering them support, whether you're in the AP world or the CCP world. Personally, I'm big on having our own teachers be the CCP teachers in the building. So our best kids aren't leaving and going to Youngstown State or wherever else they might want to go. We're going to keep them at Canfield. And I just think you need to look at your programming and what you're offering, if not yearly, maybe every other year, to see if there are some needs that your kids have or they're asking for that maybe we're not offering them in the district.
So, Joe, this may be coming from a student, it may be coming from a parent,
Okay.
but it's an interesting question here. And sometimes you get some difficult questions.
Mm-hmm.
So, when Canfield was filling out their athletic schedule, why couldn't they play Marlington?
That's a good question. I think we probably would have welcomed that, other than last time we played. Are we talking football or just in general?
It looks like it's in general, and my apologies for not knowing more about that question.
That's okay. That's okay. Well, last time we played football, it wasn't real pretty. Canfield put a pretty good hurting on us. So I don't know actually if that's the reason why we're not playing. But we've actually enjoyed coming to Mahoney County. We've played Poland before. We played Canfield before. Those schools have kind of dropped off of our schedule. I don't know if it's something maybe to do with the league makeup or not. But last time I was there, it wasn't pretty.
All right. Thank you, Joe.
Sure.
So, as good as Canfield schools are you willing to address our weaknesses, even when it's awkward or not well received?
Yeah, I think that's important. Like I said, Canfield's awesome school district, but we all have things that either the weaknesses or we just need to get better at. One of the first things that I like to do, I mean, I've talked to a lot of the community people, some of your teachers actually in Canfield, and got a pretty good perspective. But, for me, one of the first things I want to do in my first 100 days there is talk to as many people as I can and just talk about, what should we keep doing? What should we stop doing? And what do we need to start doing? And when you have that conversation with people, sometimes those things are things that aren't working, or maybe things that you need to stop doing, kind of come to the forefront. And there's nothing wrong with identifying those things. I mean, we all want to know how we're doing. and we all want to get better. So for me, you just identify them and you put some things in place to help improve, and you get better.
So obviously, we're in this business for students. So
Yeah.
what skills do you think students need most?
For me, it's 21st century. We are preparing kids for jobs that probably aren't even out there right now. And especially with this pandemic going on, I could just see all kinds of things shifting. To me, it's about being able to collaborate, communicate, critical thinking skills, technology skills. Whatever job you're going to go to, whether it's here or not right now, those are skills that are going to make you productive in that workforce. So to me, that's why I'm a big advocate of the technology. That's why I'm a big advocate of STEM and STEAM education. I think those things go hand in hand on what we need to be doing as superintendents to preparing a workforce for 21st century learning.
So if you could improve one thing immediately in Canfield, what would it be?
From the data that your group actually did and conversations I've had, I think it's communication. And it's a couple different ways. It's communication between the person in this seat and the staff. I think staff members aren't feeling heard by the superintendent. I'll just speak to me specifically. Being in that chair, I think that's one piece that needs to improve. I also think the community feels that they need to be communicated with as well. And as I mentioned earlier, I think I have some things in place that I do here that will really help serve that need in Canfield, whether it be staff and superintendent relations or school district and community relations.
So Joe, earlier, a community member is really appreciative that you mentioned your family, and you started
Okay.
off talking about your family. So
Okay.
I'd love to know a little bit more about your family. Please expound upon that if you could.
Anything specific or?
No, just tell us a little bit
Okay.
more about your family.
Sure. Well, let me start with my son. My son is 16. He has special abilities. He has Down syndrome, autism, and basically kind of tough behaviors. Andrew is a big challenge at times. But like I said, my wife and I just feel blessed that he's in our lives. We get a lot of help. The problem now is we don't have a lot of help because we're self-quarantining at home. And my wife and I are kind of running things basically on our own without help, and that's hard. But and to all the parents of special abilities kids out there, I just want to let you know, my wife and I support you. We know the struggles that you're dealing with, and keep fighting a good fight. And that's kind of what we're doing. We're just taking day by day. My daughter's an awesome young lady. She's 19. She had some struggles coming through school, I'll be honest with you. But she has grown and is turned into a beautiful young lady. And I'm looking forward to a career that she decides to pick up as well here. Maybe once things she was working in a nursing home, and we just had a lot of concern that maybe being there, just the possibilities of picking up this COVID and then bringing it home to our son. My son's nonverbal. And if he would get that COVID, we would really just be in a hard, tough way. So we're working hard to do all the right things, wearing masks, washing hands, lotioning up, and all that good stuff. So,
Joe, thank you for allowing us to get to know your family a little bit better. We really appreciate that. So over the past few weeks, you have seen Canfield school facilities.
Yeah.
What do you think are the priorities in terms of facilities right now?
Well, your district in Canfield is a lot like mine. I think there's some definite issues at the elementary level. I did not get a chance to walk through the middle school, but had been there in the past. And just from what I'm hearing and talking to people, I think the middle school also definitely has some concerns and issues that are going to need to be resolved. I have a lot of experience actually in OFCC projects and working with all that kind of stuff behind the scenes here at Marlington. We've tried a couple times to get newer facilities. We're not successful, sadly, but do bring a lot of experience. At West Branch, we went through an OFCC project, so I was part of that, specifically a renovation at the high school, which was very exciting. So those are the I guess specific needs that I've been able to either witness at the elementaries and or just kind of hear some conversation about the middle school.
So we're wrapping it up. We've only got a couple questions left,
Okay.
Joe. And I think this is an important one. Can you clearly define the role of the Board of Education and the role of the superintendent?
Sure. My role as superintendent is to educate the Board of Education. Okay, when there are all these things going on in schools, me, an assistant, and the treasurer, our job is to educate the board so they can make the best decision with the information they have at the time. That's rule number one of the superintendent. As far as the Board of Education goes, the Board of Education's responsibility is to listen, learn, educate themselves as much as well, have good conversation. When the roll is called and the vote's taken, when the decision is made by whatever number the vote is, my hope would be that we're all on board and we're all moving forward from that point on. I think that's important. A unified board is extremely important to the success of a school district. So my job, treasurer, assistant, educate the board. Board's job, make good decisions based on that information. And once a decision is made, we're all rowing that boat the same way.
So, Joe, over the past few weeks, it has been an honor to get to know you. It's been an honor to get to know all of these candidates and those that were interested in coming to this most awesome school district.
Yep.
But we're at the point of the top three right now, and any one of you can hit the ground running and lead this school very effectively. But, Joe, my last question to you is, what makes you better than the other two on why you should be picked as the superintendent for Canfield Schools?
Well, I think the strengths that I've kind of talked about tonight are what Canfield needs. I'm going to be a communicator. I'm going to reach out to stakeholders. I'm going to talk to parents, staff members, community members, all those people. I'm going to make it a priority to connect to. I also said, I think I can bring some healing and some unity to the district. I think the Lord's blessed me with some gifts and talents to be able to help with that. I'm a go-getter. I'm an innovative kind of guy. And I think Canfield could use that right now to kind of continue a lot of the successes that they have. I think that's one of my strengths and one of my attributes. And, I would just be looking forward to being able to bring some of those gifts and talents to Canfield to continue the success that they've had here.
Joe, you did a great job tonight. This is your last opportunity here to say what you want in a minute or two to the hundreds of thousands of people that are watching you worldwide right now.
Well, I guess I would just kind of go back to the beginning. I mean, when I came from Lorain down this way to Mahoning County, I got a really good idea of what Canfield was all about. And it was when Mr. Zambrini was there. That was kind of my first understanding of what Canfield was. And that's been 12 years ago, and nothing has changed. I mean, the community support, the priority to academics, the priority to extracurricular events. I'm big on that. Like I've said, what can you do to connect kids to something in your school? That's what's at Canfield, and that's the reason why I'm sitting in front of everybody today. To be very honest with you, looking for that opportunity just to be a part of that whole concept of what makes Canfield so awesome.
Well, Joe, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
We appreciate you being here. Go ahead and sign off, and good luck to you.
Absolutely.
For the process.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that are watching yet tonight, thank you for being a part of these 3 community meet and greets. I want to remind everyone that you're able to complete a survey about these 3 candidates either on YouTube, on the school Facebook page, or on CanfieldSchools.net. All of your comments, all of your ratings, all of your thoughts about these 3 candidates will be seen by all 5 Board of Education members so that they can be better informed as they make their decision. We are honored as CF Educational Solutions to work with the Canfield Board of Education, as well as the administrators, teachers, staff, and stakeholders for this great community. I want everyone to understand who's still on YouTube and on Facebook that involving the community like the Canfield Board has done is not normal. In all of the school searches that happen around Ohio, when it comes time for superintendent searches, The community is not involved like you guys have been. A 15-member panel that actually helped interview, and then all of these different focus groups as well as tonight, is something that I think makes this community very special. And I know the Board of Education is interested in your opinion. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being a part of this. You saw 3 amazing candidates tonight, and we look forward to your input in helping us to select the best leader for the future of Canfield schools. Have a great evening, everyone.